This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze. And if you haven't listened to us previously, we want to welcome you because today's theme about possibilities is really what Avoid the Maze is about. Each day we get up, we take a step forward. Some of us think we're taking a step backwards, but even going backwards, there can be possibilities. We want you to know that everyone has a struggle in their life, but it doesn't mean that struggle can't create something wonderful. So today I have Eric, and I hope I don't ruin his name, Teplitz.
Very good.
Oh, I got it on the first try. And I met Eric through podmatch.com. So for any of you out there who are doing podcasts or guests on podcasts, it's a great resource. And Eric has a website, but in addition to his website, you have a course about possibilities. I mean, who thinks about taking a class about what's possible?
Yeah, it's funny. The course started off in my mind as a book idea. I thought I was writing a book, and I've always been fascinated by how we can, more or less self-actualize, right? How we can make our lives better, how we can be our fullest selves and really show up for our lives. And this is something, I think I've been interested in this like since day one.
Okay.
And anyway, I had this idea rolling around in my head for a book in which I would reflect back on all of the ways in my life in which I was able to make breakthroughs and open up to new experiences that in some cases were profoundly life-changing. So I really put a lot of thought into what were the things that I did. Sometimes life happens, right? For good
Sure.
or bad, things happen to us. But I tried to think about it in terms of what role did I play when things went well, or when, I had an experience of really opening up to something new and something better. And I just had this running argument going, and it became really unwieldy because anytime I would just get ideas, I would just add to it. It was really incoherent and messy. And it was sort of burdensome. I would open up the document and be like, oh my God, how do I turn this into something that is coherent? And, and I actually love writing, and I've done quite a bit of it. I have a blog with over 100 articles on it. But this was, I was experiencing this sort of feeling of burden when it came to trying to make this into a book. And the breakthrough happened when I had spent probably a couple of hours. All I wanted to do was, I had an anecdote from my childhood that I wanted to include as an example to make a point. Okay.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there trying to craft this into just, a simple story, and, chisel it so that the words are just right and the message is conveyed perfectly. And I spent what felt like a long time on this. And I thought, you know what? This is ridiculous. If I were sitting across the table from someone telling them this story, it would take me 3 minutes, and it would probably have a greater impact because I would be animated, and I would, I wouldn't just be relying on the words, but I would be
Sure.
infusing my personality into it. So I thought, just as an experiment, I'm working on this Microsoft Surface Pro computer that I'm typing on, right? Just as an experiment, there's a camera on here and a video recorder. Let me just speak into it and tell the story that way, verbally, and see how it feels. I'm speaking to a camera, not a live person, but let me give it a go. And that really was the breakthrough. And I realized, you know what? I'm going to write this course not with my fingertips on a keyboard, but through speaking. And it's still very similar to the writing process, especially in the sense that editing is everything.
Right.
But I found that by speaking, it was an interesting, it's a different medium, and you're probably accessing different neurons and different connections in your brain. And so I would have an idea for a topic, and I maybe would have some points I knew I wanted to hit. But other than that, it was like whatever came into my head was great. And I could always edit,
Sure.
to make it more succinct and compact and tight. And so that's what I did. That was how I created the course. That was the breakthrough. And that was an example, ironically enough, right, of opening to new possibilities, or thinking of things in a new way to get the result that you're aiming for. And in my case, I don't know if I ever would have finished it as a book, as this unwieldy Word document, but I was really on fire, and it was just it just poured out of me. And I worked on it for 8 weeks straight, day and night, but it didn't feel like labor. I mean, yes, it was work, especially the editing. And I'm learning this video editing, and everything, because I did it all myself, just using basic tools. But I felt alive doing it. I felt like these are the messages that are really meaningful to me, that I really want to put out there. And I found that in this format, it was exciting to do. And so there you go. Yeah. So I created this course. It's called Opening to Greater Possibilities.
Well, and that's how a lot of podcasts have gotten started. Many people out there are saying, I have a message, or I want to share messages of other people. And do we really take the time sometimes to sit down and read something, because we're always on the go? Whereas your course or a podcast, people can pick it up and listen to it whenever they want. And some people like doing it while they're driving to the grocery store or driving to work. And I found the same thing, because for years I was writing a blog, and I was getting a lot out of me. And I was learning better grammar, which is very important when you put anything in writing. But I found that it wasn't being expressed exactly the way I wanted it to be expressed. And I had more people questioning me about what I wrote. Did you really mean this? Did you really mean that? And it was like, you know what? I think if I can turn this into a podcast and I can respond, and people can see, where I'm at that time, because our facial features will tell people, hey, she really believes what she's saying, or you know what, he's just full of, whatever. And
more is conveyed. Yeah, there's more information. In fact, they say most communication is nonverbal.
Yes, absolutely. So what did you do before you even thought of writing and, putting this together? Because a lot of times this is just part of that journey that we're on that we just never expected.
Well, that's for sure. My life story has had so many twists and turns in it. So I honestly don't even know where to begin. Yeah, it depends on how far back you want me to go.
Well, I mean, when you were growing up, all of us, have this idea, this is who I want to be when I grow up. They always say little boys want to be firemen and little girls want to be moms or models. And it's like, I'm not so sure that's the case anymore. I always wanted to be in broadcasting. And
now you are.
I am. And my parents, when I graduated high school, went off to college, and I said that, they looked at me like I was crazy. It was 1968. And they said, tell us what woman is in broadcasting. And back then, there were some local weather women. Okay. And my father said, we're not wasting our money. And I looked at the two of them and I said, but this is what I want to do. And it was, no, you're going to go to school and get a teaching degree. And so they didn't know the courses I was taking my first 2 years in college. I just took them. And when I finished with my associates, my parents were livid. It was like, we spent this money on you. Now what are you going to do? And I looked at them and I said, I don't know. I'll go on for my bachelor's. And they said, not on our dime. And I dreamt about it for years. But when I finally took the step to go back to school, complete my degree, get my master's, it was during my master's I decided, you know what, I'm going to do what I want to do. And it's not easy, but I saw the possibilities. Okay. No, I wasn't going to be on a network station. I wasn't going to be on a high profile news media. I would be sitting in my own studio, doing it my way. So how do you respond to that when, you talk about possibilities?
Oh, there's so much to unpack in what you just said. So much. I can relate. I have my own version of your story. I was dead set on being a musician. That was my singular passion growing up. And similarly, it was not meant with what you might call parental enthusiasm.
Yep.
But there's a point that I wanted to make sure I addressed in response to what you said, which was that once you had decided what you really wanted to do, and you said you said, I can't remember the exact words, it's not easy, or it wouldn't be easy, something to that effect. Yep. And my thought when you said that was, right, absolutely, it's not easy, but how easy is it to squelch who you are for the entire duration of your adult life, which is what a lot of people end up doing, right? That's not easy. That's not easy. So if it's not going to be easy anyway, either way, right, you might as well do something that feels right for you. You might as well spend this lifetime, as far as we know, it's the only one we have, as far as we know.
Right.
We might as well spend it exploring what's important to us, what we're curious about, what we're interested in, rather than stifling it, squelching it, and suffering internally like a martyr for your entire life. What good does that do anyone? So I just wanted to highlight that point, because sure, it's not easy, but think about the alternatives.
Right.
And if it's not going to be easy anyway, wouldn't it make more sense to do what you care about? That's that. I just had to respond to that. So what was it that you wanted?
So you actually answered my question. You wanted to be a musician.
Yes.
Okay.
So I wanted to be a musician. I was but I was, it's a very common, probably the two most common fantasies for kids, I would probably say, regardless of gender, growing up. Maybe it's a little bit different now, but when I was growing up, being a Gen Xer, I think pretty much like almost, two of the hugest dreams that kids had would be either to be a professional athlete or to be, a rock star.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And, for a lot of people, these are simply fantasies, and people are, different degrees of serious about them, right? Like some people who want to be a professional athlete, they're very serious about it. I mean, other people, it's just a notion. It's just like an idea. It's just a fantasy. It's just, fantasies are fine, and they can be really helpful in getting us through things that we have to endure, like school sometimes, which isn't, but a fantasy that's not acted upon remains a fantasy. So whereas, probably many people that I grew up with, my age, what have you, probably fantasized about maybe being a rock star, being a musician. For me, it went way beyond just this idea of a fantasy. I was so obsessed with music. Music brought me so much joy and made me feel so connected, and the music for me was, yes, it was entertainment, but it was so much more than that. It was therapy. It was feeling like other people in the world understood how I was feeling. They could express it. And to be able to, it's like you feel, and then, I mean, music just, I could go on endlessly about music, but that's not the point of this conversation. The point that I want to get to is that I put my heart and soul and much, much drive and determination and hard work into this dream that I had. And to your point, no, it was not easy because I was going against my parents' wishes. I was going against, any idea of practicality. I remember I have this memory of listening to a Roy Orbison CD. I love music, by the way, all kinds of music from many different styles and generations and whatnot. But I remember I had this Roy Orbison's Greatest Hits CD, and I was reading the little bio on the insert of the CD jacket. And it mentioned that Roy had been to college and he was studying whatever it was he was studying. And one semester he had this epiphany, I guess it was like finals week or whatever, and he didn't even go because he had this deep realization that the whole point of him being in school was to have something to fall back on in case his music career didn't take off, right?
Okay.
So he had this thought, if I have something to fall back on, I probably will. I probably will.
Interesting.
And he didn't want that safety net. He felt that would be a deterrent to pursuing what he really wanted to pursue, which was music. So I read that and I was like, whoa, I don't want a safety net either. And the compromise that I made, my parents weren't, it sounds like maybe not quite as rigid as yours were. My parents were just, it was of the utmost importance to them that I get a college degree. And they honestly didn't even care what it was in, as long as I got a college degree.
Okay.
So the compromise that I ended up making was I got a degree. I had a self-designed major. It wasn't music. I couldn't major in music. I didn't have the proper formal music training, blah, 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 et cetera, at least at the school that I went to. So I had a self-designed major, which really allowed me to just explore. It's what college should be
Exactly.
like. Now the exorbitant costs, I don't blame anyone that's not willing to do this. But the idea in my idealistic head is that college should be a time where you what do you know about life? Very little. All you've really experienced is school. And this is more school. So it should be an opportunity to explore things, see what even turns you on. You might not even know yet. So I kind of took the liberty of shopping around, not just for courses that interested me, but for professors that interested me, because I knew that was going to make all the difference in the world. I went to Penn State and a lot of classes there were huge, and you could easily not show up for class and no one would know or care. And I knew that if I wasn't interested, and typically that meant having a professor that was really dynamic and enthusiastic about their subject. If I was bored, I just wouldn't go. And I knew that. So I deliberately made an effort to try to find, again, not just subjects that interested me, but professors that really could infect me with their own passion and enthusiasm for their subject. Anyway, I'm going off on a lot of tangents.
No, I love this.
The short version. Oh, and you talked about, you used even the phrase, what you want to be when you grow up, right?
Right. Yeah.
I have on my blog, I did it ended up being a 10-part series called What Do You Want to Be When You Grow Up? And this was some years ago now, but basically I thought about this question and how pervasive it is. And all of the sort of implied questions when someone asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? Depending on the context of that, maybe you're a little kid and it's your parent or a relative that's asking you the question, but maybe not. Maybe you're in college and someone's asking you some version of that question. Or maybe you're even in midlife and you still haven't figured it out. Very common, I think.
Right.
So I took the first post and I just dissected the question itself and looked at all of the sort of implied questions underneath it that have a lot of psychological power over us. And then what I did was I attempted, really, I think just for my own sort of cathartic reasons, I wanted to retrace my entire history of answering that question from the time I was as far back as I can remember as a little kid up to the present moment, and all of the ways in which I've attempted to answer that question over the years, in the hopes that, first of all, it would help me gain some clarity with my own path, and maybe I could learn something from it, but also in the hope that other people would relate and connect to it in some way and have their own version to maybe have go through a parallel journey of retracing their own thought process and steps going through it. But again, it's very easy for me to digress, but I do want to just come back to this idea of music. I put my heart and soul and everything that I had into it. I was extremely serious about it. And did I want to be rich and famous? Well, sure.
Don't
Yes,
we all?
I did. Yeah, but it wasn't, my goal was to make a living, even a very, very modest living, doing what I loved instead of doing something I hated. So I really went about it in as practical a way as I could think of. And I go into this in excruciating detail. If you want to know the details, in that series on my blog. Absolutely. And elsewhere as well. Yeah. The goal was like, I just want to be able to survive doing this, where I'm writing my own music, recording it and performing it for people that are interested in hearing it. And I had already done a lot of performing at that point in my life. And I knew that I could connect with audiences. And I knew I wasn't totally delusional about this. I got feedback and, a lot of encouragement from my peers and positive responses that made me realize, man, I love doing this. And some people really enjoy it and appreciate it. I can't think of a better way to spend my life than doing this. Of course, I'm already thinking about it in those big terms, like my life, but that's what you do when you're young, I think. At least, some of us.
But it is your life. I mean, it's part of that journey that takes us where we're going. And sometimes, we think it's going to continue down that path. But
that's what I meant. Is like, you think you're like, just because you love something or it's the only thing you want to do, it suddenly becomes, this is what you want to do with your whole life. Well, your whole life, you don't know, none of us knows what life has in store for us, what's coming. And so I just I think in my case, it was some youthful naivete of imagining that I would be spending my whole life doing this. I mean, maybe the immediate foreseeable future for sure. Anyway, the point of this story is that despite even when I look back on the efforts that I made, I'm impressed. I had a lot of balls, if you will. And I, really went for it. I mean, I gave it everything. It didn't work out, obviously, because you would know who I was maybe if it had. But it didn't work out. And what's interesting is that I never planned on giving up because, again, I did have that kind of mindset, like, this is the only thing I want to do.
Sure.
It's interesting. It worked for me and against me, this focus and determination, but it was also a rigidness. Like, my entire identity rested on this vision that I had for myself. And even worse was a huge majority, I think, of my self-worth came from this limited identity that I had created for myself. So I really kind of set myself up looking back because, it was like, in order for me to be worthwhile, quote, worthwhile by my own assessment, I had to succeed at this. And by succeed, I meant two things. I meant succeed artistically, which meant that I was proud of the work that I was doing, that I felt like I was doing the best creative work I was capable of. So I had to feel like it was, Sure. It was me. And then also commercially, and by commercially, again, not necessarily meaning being rich and famous, I would not have turned it down. Now I might, with the wisdom of years.
Yeah.
But again, the goal was like, by succeeding commercially, it meant I can sustain myself doing this. So that was the goal. But again, I kind of felt like if I didn't achieve both of those goals, then by my own estimation, I was a failure. And I was a pretty harsh taskmaster on myself, as a lot of us are.
Right.
So while I never expected to give up that pursuit, because it was really, it was so important to me. And it was the only thing I wanted to do. I was very dedicated to it. What happened was life happened. See, life, I love the John Lennon line, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans.
Right. Absolutely.
I don't know if he invented that or if he just, took that idea and put it into a song, but either way, wow. um, Amen to that. So what I found was that I had made this pursuit and this goal of mine so important that it was literally a higher priority than just my overall well-being. That's how obsessed I was over making it a reality. And I had to learn the hard way that, even though it kind of sounds obvious as I speak to you now,
Yeah.
that your overall well-being is kind of important. Like without that, you really can't do much of anything. Like that's absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
When you're young, maybe you feel like, you can, it's not as important. Well, it is
Right.
important. And so I crashed and burned really, really, really hard. And again, you can, if you want all the gory details, you can go to my blog, but it was a profound time of my life. It was a really, really difficult time of my life because I had lost the desire to continue pursuing this goal because of what it did to me, because it was at the expense of my overall health. And when I say overall health, it's not like I was into drugs or anything like that.
Sure.
Although certainly I was probably in the minority of people in that field. I didn't even have those obstacles of drink and drugs as being an issue, but I definitely had my self-esteem tied to it. And I found myself deeply, deeply, deeply unhappy, almost inconsolable, really. And so the first thing that I had to do was accept that I didn't even have the desire and the drive to pursue this anymore. That was an extremely hard thing to accept.
I'm sure.
Really hard. And then once I was barely able to accept that, then I was faced with, well, now what? Like, this is such a huge void that I have to fill. If I'm not going to do this, then what am I going to do? So, wow. So, fast forward 24 years-ish. And here I am, and my life has gone in so many crazy, different, unexpected, unanticipated, sometimes wonderful directions that I could never have predicted. And that takes me, I think that is a good almost segue into creating this course, which is what you asked about, because I think a large part of the drive for me to create the course was almost as if I were creating it for myself in my mid-20s in excruciating pain, in excruciating psychological and emotional pain, as if to help that younger version of myself. And there have to be other people out there that are experiencing something similar.
Right.
Their own version of it. The details, I'm sure, are different, but some version of this. And I created this course, I think, in a way, wanting to reach out and instill some hope into this young guy who had been just crushed by his dreams not coming to fruition, despite giving it everything. And I really believed that if I just worked hard enough and was persistent enough and determined enough, that it would come true in some form. That was the belief that I held on to. And I was confronted with this possibility that maybe not, maybe you can do everything right. And maybe there are things that are actually just outside of your control. What a concept.
Yeah.
What a concept. And this was honest. This was, I talk about this and I'm summarizing it, but it was a really painful lesson. And it wasn't like I woke up one day and got it. I had to cycle through a lot of, and and live my life, right? Life goes on. Life doesn't
Right.
stop just because you need to figure yourself out. So I had to live my life. And this course, in a way, is me reaching out and sort of saying, look, I know exactly what you're going through because I was you. I was you. And I know how painful it is. And I'm here to tell you, don't give up on life. Maybe give up on music, or I would say not even give up on music. Maybe put this dream aside and allow for the possibility that there are other ways in which you might be fulfilled. There might be other paths and other ways in which you might derive satisfaction and joy out of life, even if the thing that you want is still more than anything, even if you can't have that, there's so much still for you. And I'm here from the future. I don't frame it this way in the course, but this is how I think I conceived of it.
Sure.
There's so much more that you don't even realize, that you're not even aware of, that life has. There's so many possibilities for you that, and here are some ways in which you can open up to them. And that really is the heart of it. And the course was just a total labor of love. And I really hope that it reaches people who can really benefit from it and really be helped by it, because, I think in my case, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I'm not like a total freak of nature. Yes, I'm different from, I'm a little snowflake, and I'm different from all the other little snowflakes, but I mean, we're all human. We have the same basic emotional spectrum that we experience, and we have the same basic fundamental needs. So I think that I was so attached to this even though it was a big dream and it was a bold dream, and I applaud my younger self for all that he did to go after it. What a wonderful thing. I will not live with the regret of not having done that.
Absolutely.
But there's no guarantees in life that things are going to work out. There's just not. We grow up watching Disney movies. Those are Disney movies. They're not life. And even if our dreams do come true, there's all kinds of unanticipated things that go alongside them. And no one, as you put it, no one gets out of this alive. No one,
Right.
No one, I really do truly believe, and I'm not suggesting that we all suffer equally. I would never suggest something so ridiculous as that. But I do think that it's part of the human experience. You're not gonna, if you're alive for any period of time on this earth, you're going to experience suffering. There's no way about it. No matter how privileged you are, no matter how many advantages you have. And my suffering, I think, was in large part self-created, and it was because of this very rigid, narrow, I can only be happy if this works out exactly as I wanted to. Well, come on. Come on, that's so one thing that I love and am tickled by in life at any age that I've been, and I anticipate at any age that I will be, is we think we know ourselves and we think we understand ourselves. And I'm not saying that we don't at all. And, I think that we, but it's a constantly unfolding process. And how wonderful that is, because what that means is that you don't even know yet the kind of, like, a year ago, 2 years ago, did you know that you would be doing a podcast? Did you envision that you would be having this experience? Maybe, maybe not. And I have personally had the experience time after time of doing things that a younger version of myself literally would not have believed.
Oh, absolutely.
And might, in some cases wouldn't have had the slightest bit of interest in. And that's fascinating to me. That's fascinating. That makes me go, well, what else then? What other possibilities might there be if I can open to them and not clamp them down before they're even given a chance? you know, and I'm not saying that I've mastered this, no, but I still repeatedly, and it delights me to discover something new that I love, or to discover a new possibility, a new way for me to be in the world that makes me feel alive and engaged and purposeful. I mean, so that's the overall message that I'm trying to put out. And I'm really proud of the course. But I also have I also do personal coaching, and for those that have no money, or and can't afford such things, I understand. And I try to put out a lot of content that is free to anyone who can access it online on my blog. And I recently created a dozen videos that I posted on YouTube that all have these messages about possibilities. I have a video called Use Everything. I love this because, as you mentioned in the opening, we have things that happen to us, and they may be just awful. They may be painful. They may be unwanted, utterly unwanted, but they do happen. So how can we use them? How can we use them to our advantage?
Absolutely.
So I in that video, I talk about that idea, and I give a few examples from my own life about things going horribly wrong and from my vantage point, but then looking at the opportunity that then opened up because of that may not have ever opened up otherwise. So this is all much easier said than done, by the way. I'm not trying to minimize the how difficult it can be. And still, again, it's not like I never experienced frustration or disappointment or any of these things. But the more experiences that you have of, I'm a diehard Beatles fan, so
I love it.
I almost can't not reference the Beatles like more than once in a conversation. But to take a sad song and make it better, right? To take something painful and fashion it into something positive. I don't necessarily know. I don't claim to know. I don't understand this whole thing we're doing, this life thing. I really don't. I am intrigued by it, and I'm perplexed by it. And especially when it comes to human suffering, like why do people have to suffer so much? It's a question that I constantly hash around and try to make sense of. And there's really no way to make sense of it. You can come up with frames and ways of looking at it that are helpful or unhelpful, but I don't know if you'll make sense of it. If you do, let me know.
If I figure that out,
Please.
we'll share it and we'll become millionaires. So
yeah, right. Trillionaires. But the point that I wanted to make is that, suffering happens, and there may or may not be a larger point to it. I don't know. Like, some people view it as suffering happens on your behalf, or so that you can become a certain kind of person, or it's a test, or people have all different ways of viewing it.
Sure.
I don't know. Okay. I don't know if there's any point whatsoever. All I know is that it seems to be a fairly universal phenomenon that people suffer. Therefore, why not do what we can? If we're going to suffer anyway, this kind of is like a similar point I made earlier. If we're going to suffer anyway, if it's not going to be easy anyway, if we're going to suffer anyway, to me, it only makes sense. How can we mine our own suffering in some kind and fashion it into something positive? So for instance, like this course, I couldn't have created it if I hadn't suffered.
Right. It's the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that we suffer so that blah, 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 X, Y, or Z. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I know that we suffer, and I know that it's possible to take our suffering and make something positive out of it, whether it's something creative that we do, some kind of artistic creation, whether it's, a cause that we commit ourselves to and adopt because we want other people to not have to suffer the way we did, whether it's just being a more compassionate person and being kinder to people. All of these things can be products of our own suffering. And so I am That's what I believe in, is to do our best to not, and also life isn't all suffering. There's also lots of great stuff. There's lots of joy too. So use that too. So the video I created, which you can find on YouTube if you Google my name, is called Use Everything. You don't have to just use the bad stuff. Now, it's more obvious to people when how to use the good stuff. If you have a windfall of money come in, well, it's kind of, it might be obvious to you the good that you can do with it for yourself and for others, right? But when something unwanted happens, that's where it's more challenging. But it's helpful to just keep in mind that you can use it. And it may take time. You might not be able to do it instantly, but ultimately you can use it and use it in some way to help yourself and others.
Absolutely. Well, a number of years ago, I adopted a quote that supposedly Audrey Hepburn made famous. Impossible means I'm possible. And I used it for a very long time. My youngest son is on the autism spectrum. Most people have no concept that he is, but he is. And we found that it was very difficult in our society raising him because we knew the certain limitations he had. Others didn't see it, but he had to work around those, and so did we. And I found at that point that I had to look at everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, and say, how do I make this work for us? How do I help him as he's growing up? But how do I help me? Because I'm affected too. And when I'd get down and think, oh, it's just not possible, everything is impossible around me, I'd take that word, I'd split it up and I'd go, but I'm possible. I can find a way around that. And this past week, I had something happen to me physically out of the blue. I thought I was having a heart attack. Went to the hospital, found out, thank God, it was not heart related. But as I laid there in the ER and I saw the ER filling up with so many people who were really, really sick, I saw great possibilities. And I know that sounds weird, but it was like, this wasn't a heart attack. So I can take this pain, okay, and I can work through it and I can do something with it. And I'm not sure what that is yet, but I do know that as I looked around, and sadly, I mean, there were people who were sitting on the floor because the ERs are filling up with COVID. I kept thinking, I've got to turn this around. And maybe I'll only touch one person. And maybe that person's only me. But that's okay.
You affect everyone in your immediate environment, and it all ripples. It ripples. And we have no concept of the ways in which it ripples. We don't.
Exactly. And so as I downloaded your course, and for everybody out there, the first part of the course is free. I've just started taking it. I really recommend that you at least download it, look at it. It's not expensive. So you may want to take the whole course. That would be wonderful. Because I do believe we all need to dig down a little bit deeper inside ourselves. But we can't blame ourselves for the things that we did.
Well, unfortunately, we can. I know from experience. Okay. We can, but it's not helpful.
Oh, okay. All right. We agreed there then. Yeah.
No, that's an important point. I mean, we can be merciless with ourselves. Merciless. We treat ourselves ways in which we would never even think about treating other people, the way that we talk to ourselves sometimes. We would never think even of talking to someone we don't particularly like that harsh. We wouldn't think of speaking to them that harshly. And so we can really do a number on ourselves. And again, I speak from experience. I've come a long way in that regard, but I'm not perfect, and I still do it, occasionally. And but so, yeah, we can blame ourselves, but it's It's not helpful.
Absolutely. Well, in one of the other shows that we do on New Cleveland Radio, it's called the Intentionality Gurus, and I'm sure it's similar to what you do in your practice of coaching. And what I have learned in the 3 years since we've been doing this show is to look at life as a gift, even the things that don't look good, or they don't look good in my eyes. And I have to stop and say, why? Why do I feel this way? Because that can help me take that step forward or decide, you know what, I'm going to take that fork in the road. I'm going to go a different direction. But trying to know why. And I think that's, what I heard you saying when you gave up the music. Now what? Okay. And if I go to the left and it's not correct, do I fail again? Or do I learn something valuable about that so I can go on another path? And I do believe if we learn something, whatever it is, that makes our life better.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. And when I want to clarify that when I gave up on music, which by the way, I felt tremendously terrible about myself for doing, and questioned myself, like interrogated myself in such an unfair and again, like really cruel way even. But I want to make an important distinction. I gave up on pursuing a music career, pursuing music as a livelihood, asking music to sustain me and support me. That's what I gave up on. And when I say gave up, it's not that I closed off that possibility from happening. Like, should some opportunity come my way, okay, great. But what I did was I put aside the pursuit of it. I have never stopped loving music.
I love that.
And music, music is, I can't imagine ever giving up on music, because music is, to me, it's like on one of the top, one of the top things on the list for reasons to live, right? I mean, music is, and still to this day, I mean, even, in recent years, I started learning classical piano, which is something I'd always wanted to
Beautiful.
do. And, I mean, music is endlessly delightful and endlessly nourishing. And there's so many ways in which it has improved my life and made my life wonderful outside of making money doing it. So I just want to make that distinction.
Sure.
As giving up on music and giving up on whatever it is that sometimes you have to give up on something. Sometimes you have to quit something. There's this horrible expression, winners never quit and quitters never win. It's like sometimes quitting something is the smartest thing and most loving thing you can do for yourself. But it can be difficult to discern when the time is right to do that. I fully acknowledge that. There was something else that you said that I wish I could rewind the tape and address, because it was pretty rich and I had something I wanted to add, but I don't remember now.
Well, you can always, add that as a message on YouTube. So
Okay.
That'd be wonderful. But tell our listeners how they can find you and be part of all this.
The easiest thing is to just go to my website, which is my name, Eric, ERIC, my last name, which you pronounced right on the first shot, pretty impressive, which is Teplitz, TEPLITZ, ericteplitz.com. And from there, you can check out my blog, you can check out articles I've written, you can check out, I don't have on my website yet a link to the videos that I made, but I should do that. But on YouTube, if you Google me, you'll find some video content. And you can also contact me if you're interested in doing one-on-one coaching. And certainly, again, I appreciate you mentioning the course, because it was really a labor of love. I put my heart into that. I'm so proud of it. And I think that it really can help And as you mentioned, it's free. If you can get a preview of it for free. You do the introduction and the first full module absolutely for free. And if you do purchase the course, there is a 30-day money back guarantee. I want to sort of just take all of the potential obstacles out for people,
Sure.
all the risk out of it, because I really want it to reach people.
Well, and it's right before the holidays, and what a wonderful gift to either give ourselves or give someone who is in search. So for our listeners out there, this gift can actually be delivered. We don't have to wait for UPS or Amazon or anybody else.
There's no supply chain issue. As long as the internet and our grid is still working,
Absolutely. Well, Eric, it's been a delight having you on. Lots of possibilities in life. And do you have any YouTubes of your music?
Yeah. So on YouTube, you can find, if you Google my name, you'll see the videos that I recently created, which are me blabbing about all this stuff like I've been doing today, but positive messages that I hope are helpful ways to think about things. And yes, you can also find, there are performances that I've done, a few performances that I just recorded by myself, and some with different groups of people that you can find online, absolutely, on YouTube, and also, you can find my music as well in the sort of usual places online, Spotify and Apple, iTunes, and all that kind of stuff. So,
well, that's exciting. We're going to get to know you even better now. So,
I just also want to really just say, whoever's listening out there, that if you're going through a hard time, and this time of year I know is difficult for a lot of people, please, I just want to convey that there's so many possibilities, positive possibilities, that we can't even necessarily see from the vantage point that we are currently at, especially if we're in pain. It's that much harder to see them. But I just want to tell you from personal experience that it's possible to go from deep despair to, you can come out of that and you can actually love your life. And there's so much potential for positive things that await you. And so, if you're in pain, there isn't necessarily a magic bullet for it. Try things. Just keep trying things until you find something that works. And don't give up. Don't give up on yourself.
Well, I have to agree with you, because I was in one of those places about 10 years ago. And, the days were long and dreary. But one of the things that a very smart friend of mine said was, I want you to go to your window at least once a day. I want you to look outside. Now, this was in the wintertime here in Cleveland, and Cleveland is a dark, dreary during the winter. And I would go to the window and I'd think, why am I looking out here? What did he want me to see? And then I finally looked up at the sky, and it was cloudy, but you could almost see a ray of sun coming through the cloud. And I thought, that's what he's telling me. The sun is behind those clouds. You can always see the sun. And the sun makes me happy. So you can understand that wintertime.
Hey, I live in LA, so and very deliberately. So I'm with you on the sun. Also, I for me personally, I have found nature, and when you talked about looking outside and even being, especially being outside, there's something in my experience, and I know I'm not alone here, that is incredibly therapeutic about being outside in nature, that I strongly suggest. I have an article that I wrote a number of years ago called "The Most Effective Antidepressant," and I'll give you the spoiler alert here. It's not any medication. It's hiking. For me, hiking. And a big part of that is the nature component, the being outside in nature, because nature has wisdom and beauty in it that can really help us when we're stuck in a very negative and difficult place. if you just spend some time in nature and just observe nature. And what I really love doing is getting physical exercise within nature, and my outlet of choice is hiking for that. You get the combination of the endorphins and your blood flow and, all of these things that make you feel good inside, but not being in a sterile gym, doing some
Right.
repetitive thing, but being in a beautiful natural environment. And beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I understand how you feel about the dark, cold winter. That's in large part why
Yep.
I like what I do. But at the same time, you can experience incredible beauty, even in the starkness of winter. Um,
Absolutely.
and it can be exhilarating even too, right? So I personally am a big advocate of spending time outside in nature in whatever fashion suits you. And I find that it's both a short-term and long-term fix. It's something that I've incorporated into my life because it's so crucial to my well-being.
Well, we want to wish you the absolute happiest holiday season. Take care, and we'll have to have you on again, and we'll talk about, you know, maybe something new that you've written. How do you like that?
I love that. And thank you so much, Karen,
Thank
for
you.
doing the show and for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I of course, wish you all the best as well. And to everyone out there, all the best.
Thank you. Bye bye now.
Take care.